hit. And what? We went back to the base, and the boat nearest him, which was the 162 boat, said, well, what happened? Jack and our boat, Jack on the 109, and our boat, the 162, is going side by side with our mufflers closed. We had to close our overwater mufflers, because stop and think, if we had 6,000 horsepower, you could hear those boats 25 miles away. But unless you closed your overwater mufflers and never went more than 6 knots, just drifted along, just slow with your mufflers closed. And we did that because, first of all, if they heard us, their shore batteries would join their destroyers firing at us. The destroyers would know exactly where we were, and the planes would hear us over their own engines, and they would start bombing more. And so that Jack was going along like we all did with our mufflers closed by order, so they made as little noise as possible, practically moving, because if you couldn't go more than 6 knots, because if you went further than that and your mufflers weren't open, the engines would stall and you'd be trapped. So Jack was going along, and what happened is the 162 boat that was next to us said that suddenly they saw coming from a opposite direction the 2 Japanese, they didn't know what they were, 2 ships, 2 things coming at them out of the darkness going like hell. Well, what had actually happened is the Japanese got all the way through all 12 of the boats and got down to right off Munda airstrip where they were supposed to deliver their troops. Do you know how Japanese delivered their troops? Did they go up to a nice pier and lower the gangplank, and they had girls singing with the, you know, and goodbye, good luck? Baloney. They didn't do that. They just threw their troops over the side. Just threw them. If they couldn't swim, they had a big heavy machine gun or a gun on their back, they died. Who cares? That's Asian. Life is cheap in Asia, especially in war. They didn't care how many they lost. So they lost 1,000, probably a third of them. They died immediately, and the rest maybe struggled ashore. And they threw their troops ashore, aboard in the water, and without slowing down. I'm talking without slowing down. Just threw them off the boat, and then turned around and was coming from an unexpected direction. Now, before we could attack 2 ships coming at us at top speed, that all we saw were their bows in the darkness, going like hell, we had to first determine they weren't 2 other American PT boats that you were firing at, or 2 American destroyers. We had to, otherwise you'd be accused of friendly fire, which the press loves to write about. Oh, the military's a bunch of jerks, they fire into each other. They don't think of the darkness, the confusion, the flares, and that we had to check all this stuff. So the 162 boat said, no, what happened? These turned out the last minute we saw they were destroyers, and it was then too late for us to get underway, and the first destroyer rammed Jack and cut his boat right in half, and the second just missed us, and we were so close to the 109 that it threw some of the flaming gasoline onto us, and we were lucky to get out alive, and we figured nobody would have lived. So we thought he was dead. We had a funeral for him, but we had funerals every night. And so that was nothing except we liked him, and Jack was gone, and the funeral he had when he was, after his assassination, was his second funeral, actually. I hate to say that, but it was. And it wasn't until a week later that what happened is I'm standing back on Lumberry Island, way back behind enemy lines, 30 miles above where we did our attack, 30 miles below where we did our attack. And I'm standing there, and 2 Melanesian natives paddled up in a native canoe. Now the natives could speak pidgin English because the British owned the Solomons. So they talked this kind of pidgin. They'd say, oh, him Longfellow boy, him like Big Star. And Big Star meant an airplane, American airplane, it had big white star. Or him no meatball, which the Japanese were the red thing. That's the way they talk. And so the natives handed me this coconut, which became the most famous coconut in the whole world. But on it, Jack Kennedy had scratched with a sharp knife or something. And they handed it to me. It was handed to little me. That's why I'm going to the Smithsonian and all. That's why I'm famous. It's not because I'm a park commissioner. Nobody cares I'm a park. Or I was planning engineer of the biggest company in California. Who cares about that? No, I got the coconut. So I got this coconut, and on it was scratched 11 still alive, send help, JFK. And that's the first time we knew he was alive. So I talked to the natives who could speak a little pidgin English, and they explained to me that Jack and his crew had somehow, some of them had survived, badly burned, totally exhausted, starving to death, had been for a whole week, and they were on a little tiny island called Plum Island. That's now incidentally called J.F. Kennedy Island, but that was called Plum Island. And more palm olive soap where you girls could get coconuts from for your complexion. But anyway, so I took the coconut down to my commanding officer, who was Hank Branningham, and he turned to me and he said, "Robbie, would you like to go in on the rescue mission?" It changed my whole life. Here I'm a doddering old 91-year-old man, and I'm giving speeches day after day after day to the biggest clubs in California. And when I spoke at the Beverly Hills Rotary Club, it was right after Hubert Humphrey, who was vice president, then running for president right before Governor Reagan. And I gave speeches in place of Governor Reagan when he was. So it changed my whole life. So I said, "Yes, sir, I'll go." Now, you girls aren't in the military yet, but I can tell you, if you are in the United States Navy and your commanding officer asks you if you'd like to do something, it's got to be the greatest idea in the whole freaking world, right? It better be in the Navy. Oh, I said, "Yes, sir, I'll go. Yes, sir, I'll go." But I really did want to go because I liked Jack, and I frankly thought it was a little easier mission, although it was very dangerous. It was 30 miles behind enemy lines, alone on a PT boat where we'd have to fire a gun to expose ourselves and look maybe and turn on our searchlight to find Jack in the darkness and the canoes and stuff. So it was a dangerous, dangerous mission, but not as bad as what you gather we were usually doing every night. And so I went in, and we sent 2 boats in, but our boat, not my boat, but at that time the 157 boat, mine was still being patched up. The boat I went in actually picked Jack up. And then and only then did we find out what really happened in the whole week from when he was rammed till when we picked him up. And then we brought him back, and they were in terrible shape. They had not eaten one thing for a week. They were starving. Now you just try not eating for a week, nothing. The only water they got was to lick the rainwater off the leaves, hoping they would get some bird droppings, some energy out of the crap that birds had. And they were all terribly burned. Now gasoline burns are the worst in the world, because when their boat exploded, everybody got burned. And then they were also burned from a whole week in the sun. And Munda Airfield and Guadalcanal, that whole area in New Georgia, is right on the equator. It's 120 degrees in the shade and no shade. And so they had terrible sunburns. Jack, it turned out in the intervening week, would go alone night after night and try to swim out. And to swim, you had to first crawl off or walk across miles of sharp coral reefs where your feet get cut to shreds. Now, once your feet get cut, you bleed. And then at night, you're bleeding. It's shark fiesta time. Sharp meal time. The South Pacific is full of sharks that are looking for a nice, fat